Tennessee hires Kim Caldwell. Was that a hire that was A, a great hire, B, a money saving hire? Now, Caleb, you're going to argue both, and I can appreciate that and respect that. But I'm going to ask you to choose between one or the other initially. I'm going to say this is a money saving move. Do you agree or disagree with that? And how vociferously do you agree or disagree?
I think Danny White, if he had to choose between the two, he would have gone for the great hire move. I disagree with you, Dave. But I think he did prioritize money saving, and I think that was important, and he was able to pull that off.
Wait, do you mean he would have gotten the Gottlieb from Southern California if he could afford her? Do you think some people told him no? You lost me a little there.
No. I think that he was going to sacrifice if he was told you have to choose between saving money or making a great hire. Like you have to, if you save money, you have to make a really terrible hire. He would have gone for the great hire. But I think he was able to find a good hire on the cheap. And so I think it was both. But I think if given the choice, which is to say, if you have to, by saving money, he wasn't going to get a good hire, I think he would have then gone for the great hire and opened up the checkbook a little more.
Okay, so you have to give Gottlieb $4 million, or you give the middle school coach down the road $50,000.
Then he would do the $4 million for Gottlieb.
Okay, all right. So great hire winning right now, 82%. I think it's a money saving move. Can I throw this out there for you? And no, I haven't been hanging out at the Hemp House, but you should. Hemp House online. When it comes to the Hemp House, their premier dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. They ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to hemphousechatwith2ts.com, hemphousechatwith2ts.com, or use the promo code hooked for 10% off. May I offer you this? Despite the recent ascension of women's basketball, what if baseball is bigger than women's basketball in 4 or 5 years? What if it's comparable now, which I'm not saying it is, but I wouldn't mind running some TV numbers on that. What if Danny White says to himself, I'm better off investing money in not only keeping this Tony Vitello guy, but expanding this stadium because it can be as big or bigger than women's basketball? First, is that a crazy notion to throw out there for any college athletic department? Second, is it a crazy notion given that this is Tennessee and not just an average women's athletic department? Thoughts?
I think that's not crazy, but because there is some connections there in terms of the interest in baseball versus women's basketball. But do you go by ratings or do you go by coverage? Because I think women's basketball is covered a lot more than is reflected in the ratings. I will say that ESPN talks women's basketball all the time.
Okay, but can I make one devil's advocate? We've looked at our analytics, and you guys have absolutely gravitated, and thank you for doing so, to Lady Vols coverage and the fact that there was a coaching change. So we assign the coverage based off what you have the most interest in, right?
Well,
So,
isn't there also there's a difference between what people talk about sometimes in sports and what people watch? I think there's sometimes a difference in that. And I think women's basketball
everybody wants
has
to have a vote in who the Lady Vol coach might be, but they might not be watching the Vanderbilt game in mid-Feb.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So in that, baseball may draw more because there's just a lot of fun in going to a baseball game, even college baseball. But I would say that you spend more in women's basketball because the visibility of women's basketball makes your program more visible, and you've got to be upfront with that. And so I think that, yeah, I think the women's basketball program, I think the spending has to be there more for women's basketball because that's what ESPN is going to talk about all day. That's what FS1 is going to talk about all day. That's what's going to draw eyeballs on YouTube. So that's going to make your program more visible as an athletic department as a whole, which does matter.
Okay. Do you care if Tennessee is this is purely a heart question, not a mind question. Do you care if Tennessee is known, and I'm talking to the message board too, I want your thoughts on this. Do you care if Tennessee is known as a baseball school more than a women's basketball school, say LSU, before they hired Kim Mulkey. They were known more of a baseball school. South Carolina before they hired Dawn Staley. I mean, they were known as baseball schools first, and then the women's aspect of it has come along in the past decade or so years, less than that for Mulkey. Do you think that Tennessee fans would care if they were viewed that way?
I think they might watch baseball more, but they want to be a women's basketball school more. There's too much pride there. Like I've talked about the history of Title IX, the history of women's basketball at Tennessee, the history of what it meant for Tennessee to embrace women's sports. Guys, Tennessee had high school basketball for girls in the 50s before it was ever a thing anywhere else. I mean, this is a state and a school that takes a lot of pride in that. And it has actually built up their fan base to a certain degree. I mean, let's think about this. Maybe Tennessee has a lot of football fans because of people who appreciated the women's basketball program and they gravitated to the university as a whole. So, I mean, I think because of that, it's got to be women's basketball.
Okay. I'm going to challenge that in a second. I'll remind you, BetUS, you can deposit in there 125% of your bonus. That's right. You make a deposit, you get 125% of it 3 times over, plus 10% gamblers insurance. I think this might be a baseball first school. I don't think that's the end of the world. It's 15 seconds.
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Caleb, you're paying the Lady Vols coach $750,000. Is it outside the realm of possibility that Danny White views this athletic department just like I laid it out, and that is an athletic department that is more baseball centric than women's basketball centric? Not what you think, but what do you think he's thinking right now?
Yeah, from a business perspective, the baseball program, I think, does actually bring in a little more revenue than the women's basketball program. I do think that. But at the same time, I don't think that means he's going to toss the women's basketball program to the side. He did a win-win. He got a cheap hire with a very, very positive up-and-comer.
He did get a cheap hire. But in and of itself, just $750,000 seemed like a very minuscule number to pay what is essentially 2 times removed Pat Summitt's replacement. Doesn't that seem low to you, or is that just me?
No, it does seem pretty low, but I think that's – I mean, I'm not denying that's why he made that hire. I'm not denying it at all, but, I mean, here's the thing. Josh Heupel was kind of on the cheap when Danny White hired him, too, relative to other football coaches. So –
I actually wanted to ask you that. How would you – other than the big splash thing, I think it is similar because he had only been at UCF for what, 4 years?
3
years. And I mean, how would you compare that splash to this splash?
I think this is more of a splash. Funny enough, people were really upset about the Josh Heupel hire. People thought he just inherited a program from Scott Frost and that he was slowly declining. There was a lot of anger at the Josh Heupel hire. This is a bigger splash, honestly, than that one. I think people are more excited about the Caldwell hire. I also think there's just more faith in Danny White this time around because of his track record and what he did with Josh Heupel. So I think people who may not have wanted her have said, well, I didn't want her, but Danny White wanted her, and I trust Danny White because he's the best hirer in the business. I think that's how that went.
I want to ask this question tomorrow, too. How many Lady Vol fans are just out because it's not Summit anymore? Can we get into that tomorrow a little bit? Because I think that is something that needs to be discussed. If you were a Pat Summitt fan and not a women's basketball fan, not necessarily a Lady Vols fan, that's fine. Just be honest about it. If you're not going to show up because Pat Summitt was treated wrongly, and I believe she was at the end, despite it was outside of her faculties to make the correct decision, then just don't like her because of that. But you're telling me you've got a younger coach who runs an up and down, exciting style. If you don't like this hire because she's not getting paid enough, well, who in the world makes that complaint? Who buys a car and says, yeah, I love that car. It's just I didn't pay enough for it. So
yeah, no, I totally agree.
I mean, come on. I mean, see what she is in 2 or 3 years and judge her. I think it's probably on the cheap. and that's his grand plan in 5 years to be known as a baseball school. I don't think that Danny White has ties to Tennessee, and he sees the importance of women's basketball like you and I do. But I could be wrong. And I don't think that – go ahead.
I disagree. I think Danny White's had his finger on the pulse of Tennessee for a while now. He got a lot of things right, understanding the history of the football program and stuff like that. I think he knew what he was doing. He understands from a business side that you got to be a little cheap, but he also understands the value of the Lady Vols. He actually had his cake and ate it too here. So, I mean, that he's one athletic director who can pull that off.
Still tell you, though, if it's in the back of his mind that you're better off having a left offensive guard than a women's basketball coach, he's going to lean in that direction. Would you disagree with that?
No, but who wouldn't? Tennessee's a football school first.
Right. Maybe UConn is the only place that you wouldn't do that.